All right. Now I'm hoping Josie's going to flit across, but if she doesn't, we've had a few technical issues this morning. Let me just see. Oh, yes, it worked.
Can you see me and hear me?
Fantastic. Yes. Amazing. Yes, I can see you. You're looking lovely in red. And yeah. Oh, Julia says yes, she can hear us too. So that's great. So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Day 2 of EventWell. We had a great day yesterday. Lots of amazing sessions. I'm sure some of you were probably on those, and I hope that you got some amazing information to take away with you, and you've done a bit of networking as well. Just a bit of housekeeping. So if you could just make sure your mics are off, so as we don't interrupt anything that Josie's saying during her presentation. On the right hand side, I'm sure you're probably all used to this by now, but just to recap, obviously you've got the chat box, so if there's anything you want to comment on during the talk, then please type in there. You've got the participants area there, so if you want to send an individual message to any one of the attendees or myself or Josie, then just click on us and type away, and then you've got the Q&A box, and that's where if you've got any questions for Josie, if anything pops into your head while she's speaking, then just type a question in there and then we will go through them at the end. But I'm not going to speak now. I'm going to hand over to Josie, and Josie, I know, has gone through a bit of a sort of life-changing, especially through this challenging time that we all seem to experience. So I'm sure she'll take us through that. But yeah, Josie, thank you. Welcome to EventWell, and take it away.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, thanks so much for the welcome, and hello to those of you that have been able to join today. I'm really glad to be here. Thanks to EventWell for having me, and thank you for making the time to join us. I think we're all a bit fatigued, aren't we, by sort of virtual events and joining Zoom or whatever it might be. So yeah, thank you for making time. A few things before we get started. So there may be some things where you want to make notes with what I'm going to talk about. So if you haven't got a pen and paper to hand, you might want to grab one quickly, just so that you've got a means to make notes if you want to. Questions, I will try and keep an eye on the chat, but I may not be able to see things as we go. So I'd say if there are questions, pop them in, but you may need to just highlight to me or Lou at the end, and we can go back to them, just so that if there is a lot of chat about something, it doesn't get missed. And I'm about to share my screen, and I will be sharing my screen throughout. So you also may, if you're able on your device, to move around the chat box or something, just so that you can see the presentation and that it's not obscuring anything. You might want to just have a little play with that if it allows you to. So here is a moment of truth, whether the share screen works. Let's see.
It does, it works.
Okay. Right. Sorry, I'm just seeing I'm seeing a duplicate copy of me on the screen and just wondering how I get back to my desktop. Sorry, bear with everyone.
Go to the arrow at the top, you should be able to click out, or maybe, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Oh. Do you want me to share it, Joe?
Yeah. Is that all right? Because it's
absolutely. There we go.
That was giving me a very strange kind of black and white visual, which was not what I was expecting.
All right, so you can see me now, can't you? There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
And someone else just put something in the chat to say that they can see that okay. And Lou, I'll just ask you to drive the slides if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, in small. Yeah, I don't know. It's small on mine as well, Lou.
You might need to, I don't know whether you've got minimizer, like you might need to all fiddle around with your minimizer on the screen. I don't know if that works. If not, I'll try and figure out.
Oh, I clicked it. Yeah, Julia says I clicked it. It's opened up fine now.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
It sounds like maybe you have to click in it to get the to get the full view.
Yes.
Hopefully. Yeah. So Lou, if you're happy to drive the slides, I will. I'll just
let me know.
Just let you know from one to the other. Perfect. Nice bit of teamwork. That's what we like. So yeah, so in terms of what we're going to cover today, we can just move on to the next slide. We'll talk about the next 45 minutes or thereabouts. So I'm going to talk about 3 things that I think will help you thrive at work, even in times of uncertainty. And I think there's no doubt about it. We've all seen plenty of that already in 2020. So the idea behind what I'm going to share is that these are all things that can help you and hopefully will be applicable whatever your situation, whatever it is you do for work, whatever industry you're in. Wrapped up in that, there are some coaching questions and some mindset hacks that I'm going to share with you, which again should be applicable whatever it is you do or whatever your situation. It may be with those questions. There are some slides where there are numerous questions on a single slide. If you want to take a picture on your phone or a little kind of screenshot of it so that you can go back to it, please feel free to do that, just because there might, if you're trying to write it down, it might be a bit quick to get through that in the time. So yeah, feel free to take pictures of any of the questions, because we don't really have long enough today to sort of reflect on them individually and discuss them, which I would have liked to have done, obviously if we had lots more time, but to give you as much as I could in the time that we have. You'll be able to take those away, and obviously I'll talk about how they're relevant. So hopefully that will all make sense. And then I've got some resources at the end in terms of some books and other things that might be useful, and my contact details. So that's the kind of the plan for the session today. I hope that all sounds okay and what you were expecting, what you signed up for. So if we can move on to the next slide. Just start with a little kind of intro about me. And this will be brief because obviously we don't have lots of time today. So the things that I wanted to share with you, I'm a qualified life coach, but I specialize in career coaching and specifically career change coaching. So working with people that are looking to or needing to make a change from what they've been doing. That tends to be in one of 3 ways. So it might be through a career pivot of some kind, whether that's into doing what they've been doing, but into another industry or in a slightly different job. It might be a bigger change in terms of wanting to start some sort of side hustle on the side or a small business that they then want to go on to do rather than perhaps the job that they've been working in, or perhaps a complete rethink of the way that their career is sort of designed and set up. So what I would describe as a portfolio career, which is more like what I do now, which I'll tell you about in just a sec. So where you have multiple different things that you do and multiple different income streams. So those are the ways that I tend to work with people in terms of navigating that kind of change. And for me, it's something that has happened in terms of transitioning to this portfolio career quite recently. So only in the last couple of months. So I was working in a 9-to-5 in marketing and communications, and I've done a lot of events in the past as well. And I've been doing that for the last 15 years, so working across corporates and startups. But last year I trained to be a life coach and completed my qualification for that in spring 2019, and had been doing that on the side with private clients, so very much the sort of side hustle model that I mentioned. And I also started a separate business teaching people how to run with their dogs. So it's quite a quirky one, but essentially I'm a dog friendly PT, and that's something that I do on a Sunday. So again, very much a kind of a sideline. So now I'm combining career coaching, some freelance marketing and communications, so similar to what I was doing in the corporate world, and my dog friendly PT business. So that's what I do, and it's one of the reasons, I suppose, why I'm really passionate about helping other people find what is going to make them feel happy and fulfilled at work, because I think there are so many different ways in which to do that, and to sort of find what it is that's going to suit you. I've also gone through redundancy. So for anyone that, is in that position, I think, there are lots of people now sort of facing that, whether it's that's already happened or whether they have been furloughed and are still on furlough and are perhaps worrying about what's, coming up in the future. I've been there too. So that's my background, just to give you a little bit of insight into who I am and what I do. So Lou, if we can move on to the next slide. A little bit about the future of work, just for sort of context around the things that I'm going to talk about today. I thought this was important to touch on because I think we're all feeling, that there's been lots of change and, there probably is more change coming. And I thought it was useful just to reflect on some of the things that are likely to be the kind of anchor points for what work will be like, in the future. And I think one of the things that we're seeing coming out of this is that working more flexibly will be much more common. So we've already seen in the news that there are big companies kind of talking about the sort of changes that they are going to make. So Facebook have said that they would be working at home until the end of 2020, and Mark Zuckerberg expects half of its workforce to work remotely over the next 5 to 10 years. Twitter has said their employees can work from home forever. They must be delighted for anyone that is really liking working from home. And even, what I guess would be thought of as quite a corporate institution, Barclays, their CEO has said they're rethinking their long-term location strategy, and that the notion of putting 7,000 people in the building may be a thing of the past. So, we're already seeing this with really big established companies, whether they are in the tech space or whether they are in the more kind of traditional corporate space. Office working, as we, have seen and heard, may feel totally different, when people start going back into the office and are doing that on a day-to-day basis, whether it's about the need for physical distance or whether it's about the makeup of, a team and what that looks like and what that feels like if there have been other restructures or other changes. And I think my sort of take on this is that I think every company will have to be thinking like a startup, because of all of the challenges and the changes that we're seeing. So it could mean that there's a real shift, in some workplace cultures as well. I believe that there's going to be some unexpected career development opportunities for those of us that are looking out for them, whether it's about teams being in a different size and shape or what your company might need. And I think what underpins all of this is probably that there is going to be a need to pivot in some way. And what I mean by that is to go with change and be accepting of that and be open to that and willing to what it might bring. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But that really sort of sets the context of what I think we're going to have to be dealing with. So if we move on to the next slide, we're going to talk about briefly just what is in our control to change, because it may be feeling already like with these sort of changes that are coming that, you might be feeling, I don't feel in control of anything, and I think now is a good time to pause and reflect on the things that actually are still in our control, whether it's our thoughts and what we choose to think, whether it's the action that we're taking, whether it's having the right kind of mindset that is open to new things or more of a growth mindset. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Or skills, whether it's about tapping into skills you already have or looking at what you might need to upskill in a changing work environment. So I think it's important to remember that even though there is a lot that may feel out of our control at the moment, there are always things that we can control, and just kind of keeping hold of those and seeing what it is that we can harness to galvanize the right kind of change and get us in the right kind of way of thinking for this new world that we're entering in terms of work. So moving on, the first tool that I want to talk about, and you may have heard this a little bit, being talked about in terms of something that's going to be important in the world of work. And I think it's a really critical one. So I've given a little definition here, which is around being able to bounce back or be flexible in the way that you handle difficult situations. And I'm sure, you know, many of us have been in that kind of situation before at work, whether it's, you know, dealing with an event or something else, you know, that may have come up. But I do feel like it's something that we are going to have to draw on more and more, you know, throughout the course of 2020 and beyond, as there is more change that we are having to deal with, which is why I think it's so important. So it's something that I wanted to touch on. And on the next slide, we're just going to look at, just go back.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So yeah, this is something, I don't know if any of you have seen this already. It was something that was doing the rounds on the internet kind of quite recently, but I just thought it was a really interesting reminder, and I suppose a kind of a reframe around, you know, how we think about a crisis situation or an emergency or whatever it might be. And I just love this, that inside the word emergency is emerge, and from an emergency new things come forth. And that, I think, is as I say, a really kind of nice way to reframe this this change, and how we might be kind of responding to that, and what we can do to get us in the right mindset, you know, to deal with that. So on the next slide, we're going to look at, sorry, it's my dog in the background just making himself known. Ways to test your resilience, which I think is a really good starting point to kind of see where you are at, sort of in terms of what you're you know, how you've been dealing with this at work, or with you know, with other things. So there are 4 questions here, which again, you might want to take a snap of these and sort of come back to them later if you want to have a think about this, because obviously we don't have time to sort of delve into each one and really discuss it. But some of the things that I think can be a good starting point on the ways in which to test your resilience would be thinking around how you approach new challenges. So are you someone that, you know, is like, yeah, bring it on, I'm game for that, yes? Or are you someone that is more likely to feel like, oh, I'm not sure about that, or go into kind of more of a negative mindset about, I'm not sure that I would be able to do that, or I'm worried about, you know, this and that. How open are you with others when things get tough? And we're going to talk about the importance of this on the next slide, but it's a useful one just to think about whether you are someone that is you know, open and sort of ready to share that, you know, when things get difficult, and, you know, have people to lean on, or whether you tend to kind of internalize it. How happy are you to try something you've never done before? So it's a bit similar to the first one around whether you you know, you would be the kind of person perhaps in an office environment, or, you know, in your job, to be putting your hand up to do that, or whether you're more likely to think, oh no, I'll let someone else do that, or no, not sure, have some of those other kind of negative thoughts come in. And also where you might be self-sabotaging. So this is a sort of a coaching term, but it's in this kind of context, I would describe it as, you know, whether you are looking after yourself, you know, thinking about some of those really important things about getting enough sleep, getting some exercise, you know, eating the right kind of things that actually are going to fuel you properly, you know, for whatever it is that you're doing, and perhaps not letting, you know, some of those kind of bad habits or things that we can do really easily kind of creep in and affect the way that you might be able to deal with, you know, a difficult or a kind of a changing situation. So moving on to the next slide, I wanted to leave you in this section with 5 ways that I think you can build your resilience at work. And again, these, you know, if you want to take kind of pictures of any of these to sort of go back and look at afterwards, please feel free to do so. So the first one here is about celebrating the wins. And the example that I've given is from the to-do list to the to-da list. And I don't know if anyone has come across this this term before, but really this point is all around the importance of gratitude. And I'm sure, you know, many of you have come across that before, in terms of thinking about actually what you're grateful for. And I think that links very closely to taking stock of actually what has gone well, rather than, you know, focusing on the negative, which can often be the case, I think, when we're dealing with, difficult or kind of changing sort of situations. And I think a really easy way to do this for you that doesn't, rely on anyone else or doesn't need to involve, your wider team or whoever else you might be working with, is to take some of the focus away from the to-do list, which I think so many of us rely on, and it's, it can be a bit of a crutch, going through the week in terms of all of the things that we have to do, and make sure that you are also creating what I've described here as a to-do list, which is essentially all of the things that actually do get done in that week, because I think we can be so keen to take things off the list that they get forgotten by the end of the week in terms of what we've achieved. And part of this is about really building that positive mindset that actually you have got through lots of things, you have got the capability to do these different things that are perhaps being thrown at you. So if that isn't something that you've come across before or isn't something that you do, I would really encourage you to give it a go. It's a very easy one to kind of get started on straight away. And I'm sure you will be surprised at what is on the to-do portion of the list by the end of the week. So celebrating the wins and the successes and kind of finding those in a week, even if there are things that are difficult, is a really important one. So find where you have choice is the second point. And with this, you may have heard before about, focus on what you can control and not the things that you can't control. And it's tied up with that really, in the sense that actually, even when things feel completely out of our control, or that we perhaps don't have a lot of control over what's going on, we always have a choice in certain things. So if you think back to that earlier slide about that sort of set the scene before we went into some of these things around mindsets and actions and behaviors, those things are always within our own capability to to control or make a decision on. So I think finding those things where actually you do have a choice about how you might be responding to a difficult or changing situation is something that can actually feel quite empowering when there's a lot of things that perhaps feel out of our control. Right, support system is the next one. And this point is really around assessing your support system and whether it is made up of radiators or drains or a combination of the two. That might be something you've heard about before. So, is it people that are really empowering you and, giving you the right kind of support and really lifting you up? Or are there people that are sort of having the opposite effect? And with this, I'd encourage you to think about the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with, because that can be a really good indicator of what your immediate support system is like, and actually whether there's anything you might need to change in that, whether it's who you're choosing to hang out with, or if you don't have that choice with them, with some of those people, thinking about what else you could change to make your support system as good as it can be. Making time for things that energize you. So this is the next one, and I think it's a really critical one, particularly when we are having to deal with change and when we're having to deal with lots of difficult things, because it's at that time, I think, when actually we really need to be sort of on our A game in terms of energy. So I liken this to thinking about a scuba diver who wouldn't go and start a scuba dive with an oxygen tank that is sort of 10% full. They just they wouldn't do that. They need a full tank to be able to go and do that kind of activity. And I think it's definitely worth thinking about making sure you build in time in the week for the things that really energize you, whatever that might be. So if it's not something you've thought about, you can have a little think about what those things might be. Is it going for a run? Is it going for a walk? Is it sitting in the garden with a cup of tea? Is it playing with your kids, your dog, whatever it might be, talking to a friend on the phone? I think it's really important to build in those things and make time for it and make it a non-negotiable in your diary, whatever that might be, so that not only are you bringing balance to your week, but also that you are building in time for the things that are going to energize you, to be able to do the hard stuff, whatever that is, whatever's kind of going on at work or in your business or whatever you're doing. And the final thing here is around paying attention to how you talk to yourself. So In coaching, we refer a lot to something called limiting beliefs, which is, in simple terms, is essentially the way that we talk to ourselves about and the stories that we tell, things that we think about ourselves that may not necessarily be true, but we've sort of gone along with them for normally quite a long time, because they're normally formed in sort of early childhood, and it can often manifest sort of later on in things where we'll say to ourselves, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not good enough, I'm not experienced enough, I'm not qualified enough, you know, whatever it might be. I'm sure we've all been there. It's really, really common to have that sort of mean voice in our head that is not particularly helpful, you know, particularly when we are having to deal with change or with kind of difficult situations. So it's really important to pay attention to how you're talking to yourself, and if there is something that, you know, keeps sort of cropping up, or there's a kind of a narrative that is the same sort of thing, really sort of take that and think about, actually, how could I reframe that? Could I write it down in a different way and, you know, create a more positive affirmation that would help me to think about that differently? What evidence do I have that actually the thing that I'm saying, you know, I can't do, actually I have done that before in the past? Because often we just forget about the examples where, and the evidence that we have for ourselves of where we've already had to deal with a difficult situation, already had to deal with change, or whatever it might be. So those are my top tips on building resilience. So moving on to the next section, this is all about adaptability. So being able to be flexible or creative in new or uncertain situations. So on the next slide, we're going to look at just a couple of examples really quickly, just to sort of lighten the mood of what I came across during the pandemic, where I think there are a couple of small businesses that I think are really brilliant examples of, you know, adapting very quickly and very nimbly, you know, to quite you know, difficult and kind of a changing situation. And the first one here, I don't know if anyone saw this in the news, is a bakery in Finland that essentially sort of stopped itself from going out of business by jumping on the trend and the kind of the zeitgeist of the time back in, I guess it was probably March, April of, you know, that time. Do you remember when we were all stockpiling toilet roll? Well, maybe you weren't, but, you know, obviously there was a huge kind of thing at the time where people were. And the pivot that they made in their business was creating these toilet roll cakes, which actually sold really well. And I think the owner of the bakery was able to take on more staff to be able to support that. And she talks in this article about how it really kind of saved them, you know, during that time. So I just thought, what a brilliant idea. The next one on the next slide is something which I really hope still to be able to use at some point on a Zoom call. And this is a farm in the north of England that essentially has come up with this fantastic pivot where they are hiring out their goats to join your Zoom call. So if you ever want to zhuzh up your Zoom call or bring a bit of interest, you can have a goat from this farm join you on your Zoom. And again, I think just a brilliant example of something where if they'd kind of sat and thought about it too hard or kind of asked too many questions, you know, they probably wouldn't have done it. But, you know, with this example, she's had, you know, requests kind of coming in from all over the world. Has had amazing kind of PR about this sort of bold move that they've made. And I think it's just a really good thing to kind of see what other businesses are doing to sort of get us in, you know, this frame of mind about adaptability and how positive it can be, you know, in the face of change. So those are some examples from the business world that I saw that I thought were really relevant to this. And if we move on to the next slide, why is it important? Well, I think there is a couple of reasons. So Job for Life, you know, was something that was very much, I think, something that we, came to sort of expect, that was part of the narrative, you know, a little while back. But I think now it's really been replaced by this idea of career possibilities rather than, you know, one thing that you want to stay in. Your company or business could be in a totally different, you know, size or shape. And that may mean new challenges, but also new opportunities. So if we move to the next slide, one of the things that I just wanted to leave you with, I suppose, with this this point around adaptability is that you are already way more adaptable than you think you are. And the reason for that is that, over the last couple of months, all of us have had to adapt to having our freedom taken away, having to deal with a complete, change in routine, have probably had holidays cancelled, have possibly had weddings cancelled, or other big family events that have had to be kind of rethought. Some of you might have suddenly had to become teachers. There are all of these kind of changes that we've already had to find a way to deal with. So I think if you were ever doing that limiting beliefs exercise that I talked about and looking for the evidence of where you have been able to be adaptable, this is it. It's right here in the last couple of months, which is why I wanted to sort of make this point about you're already way more adaptable than you think you are. But I do think it's an important skill, thinking forward for the world of work. And on the next slide, there should be, I think, 5 ways. Yes, 5 ways to build your adaptability at work. So the things that I've covered off here are around practicing swapping your comfort zone, which obviously some of us like to, stay in, for what I would describe as your courage zone. So thinking about where you can step out of that comfort zone, what that might look like if you were doing that in a very, taking a small step out of it rather than, doing anything kind of big and scary, but just getting into that mindset and that zone of being able to do that. Improve, not prove. So this point is around, I think we can all be a little bit guilty perhaps of, when we're working on something and, perhaps particularly in a team, of being really focused on trying to prove that we're right, or that we know, the thing, whatever it is, or that the way that we're going to do something is the right way, or that it's going to work. And this point is really around sort of flipping that on its head and thinking about what would that look like if actually you were focused on improving rather than proving. And really that goes hand in hand with being open and willing to ask lots of questions of those that you're working with, being really curious about what could be another way, to do this, or a better way, or just a different way, from someone else's perspective. And with that, I think it's the idea of failure kind of becoming a learning tool sort of goes hand in hand with that, because I think we can be really scared of failure as a whole, and sort of thinking about what that says about us or how competent we are. But really my view is that with failure, you haven't failed unless you failed to sort of take any kind of learning from it. So improve, not prove. Find an adaptability mentor. So this is one where there's probably someone whether it's someone you work with or perhaps someone in your network who you think is really good at navigating change. And with this, the idea here is to kind of think who that person is, and could you have a conversation with them, or could they become your mentor if it's something that you want to really work on in terms of getting good at change and understanding how someone else has done that. So who could be your adaptability mentor would be the third kind of point here. Saying hello to your growth mindset. So I mentioned growth mindset earlier on, and really this is the point around. So with mindset, there's generally thought to be two types. So it's either fixed mindset or growth mindset. Fixed mindset is where you are sort of in the zone of saying, I can't do that, it's too hard, I'd never be able to do that, that's not for me. A growth mindset is very often can be, you can go into that zone just by adding the word yet to something. So I'm not confident enough yet, I'm not experienced enough yet, whatever it might be. It's about seeing the possibility and knowing that, believing that, something is possible in terms of change and what you might have to do to get there. And I think this is a really, really important theme that kind of runs through all of this, whatever you might be looking to do. Find the joy would be the final thing, which is that when we're adapting or having to change the way that we work, or look for something new, or dealing with a new team, whatever it might be, I think there's always a way to kind of make it fun, and to think about actually what could you do that would kind of make you laugh in this sort of situation. Even I've been there, even with an event where there's something that's sort of going horribly wrong, or whatever it might be. There will always be a way, even if you have to do it afterwards, to I suppose find the joy in that moment and find the kind of the humor. And laughter is a great way to sort of release endorphins and make us all feel really good. So that would be my final tip there. Moving on to the last section, because I'm just conscious of time and that we need to wrap things up so that we don't run over. The final thing is around curiosity, which is a strong desire to know or learn something. So there were just a couple of things I wanted to share on the next slide about this that I think are relevant to what we've been talking about. And my view really is that this year might feel really hard, in a lot of ways, and really uncertain and really unclear. But I think there's actually never been a better time to get curious about the future life and the career or the business that you want to build. So there are a couple of things I'm going to talk about on the next slide, which hopefully will bring this to life a little bit more. And I've split this into two things. So it's really around questions. If you are in a job at the moment and you're thinking, or you're in a particular career and you're thinking, yeah, I want to stay doing that. And then there's some others which are around if you're either wanting or needing to look at something else, some questions that you can ask yourself that might help. And these are the things that you might want to take a snap of if this whatever is is most relevant to you. So just quickly to sort of run through these 5 questions if you want to stay in what you're doing now, that can still help you kind of tap into that curiosity and think about actually, how can you shape your career? How can you make or facilitate change that actually is going to benefit you and take your career in the direction that you want it to, even amongst all of this uncertainty and change and difficulty that's going on. So first one, what do you want more of in your career? That might be something that you can take away and have a think about, or perhaps talk about with a few people who can help you find those opportunities, whatever that might be. This goes back, I think, to seeing that there might be unexpected career development opportunities even within our organizations that we've been in sort of through this. If teams have changed shape or size, or there are new demands coming in of a business, yes, that's probably going to be create some challenges that are difficult to deal with. Equally, there could be opportunities that are created by that change that mean you could step into that. But I think very often we have to be the ones to to find that and to seek it out, and not expect it to be handed to us on a plate. So thinking about what you want more of, who can help you find those opportunities, what goals do you want to carry on from before lockdown? So thinking about what was relevant to you before and what is still relevant to you now. And then on the flip side of that, thinking about what's changed, because it may be that there are certain things over the last couple of months that you have, thought, actually, I don't, I've been tolerating this, I don't want to anymore, whatever it might be, whether it's a commute, whether it's, something else that's going on at work or in your business. Thinking about what's changed and what that might look like in terms of what you are then going after in the future.
Sorry, it's my fault. I've just extended. So just in case, I didn't want you to just cut out, Josie. So I've just extended the session. So that's fine. Apologies.
Sorry, no, that's okay. We're galloping towards the end. But I know we started a little bit after, and you've got
some time, so don't worry, don't rush.
So 5 questions if you want to stay. So that's if you're in a career or in a job and you're thinking, I'm gonna stay. I think, as I say, there's still things that you might want to examine in terms of how do I make this work for me, going into the second half of 2020 and beyond. On the next slide, there are some things that are going to be much more applicable if you want or need to do something new. So these are 5 questions around that might be applicable to you. So the first thing is around the options that what options do you have? So that would be really, thinking about all of the different things that might be available to you. We always have more options or kind of possibilities than we think we do. So whether you're thinking about staying in your industry or, you know, doing something slightly different, or a kind of a bigger shift, thinking about, you know, really kind of brainstorming around all of those things. And again, this is where it can help perhaps to talk to someone else to get a bit of fresh perspective, so that you're not just you know, stuck in kind of blinkered sort of thinking, which is very easily done. The second thing would be around, you know, what would a small, a medium and a big pivot look like for you? So if you are wanting or needing to do something different in the second half of 2020 and beyond, there will be different things that you can do that are either a kind of a small shift right up to a, you know, big shift. And again, you know, that can help as a kind of a mapping exercise to think about what those pivots might look like, and where your options lie and what you want to explore. What has this time taught you about what you want? So this one is a more reflective question, I suppose, around thinking about what you've learned over the last couple of months. If you are wanting or needing to do something different, what new things have kind of come up for you over the last few months that are going to really help drive your decisions going forwards in terms of what you want more of, how you want to shape your career. Something that focuses around strengths and kind of digging into that is around what feels effortless to you, because often we can get very we forget what we're good at, and it sometimes takes other people to tell us. But there's a way of kind of thinking about this in terms of what people always come to you to ask, or what people say as sort of off the cuff remarks in terms of, oh, you're so good at this, or, you know, you just do this and make it look really easy. You know, those kind of comments that you might have had can be a really good indicator of actually what your, you know, maybe what your hidden strengths are, or things that you kind of take for granted, or you just sort of assume that everyone's good at them, when in actual fact other people see them as a real, you know, as a real strength of yours. So that's something that's a really useful exercise to do if you are thinking more broadly about where you want to go with your career, and, you know, what would be a good use of your of your skills or of your strengths, just to think, you know, bigger picture about that. And then the final one is kind of I suppose the sort of devil's advocate question around, what is it costing you to stay in something that doesn't make you happy or isn't fulfilling? And this is more, I suppose, if you're in a situation where you are still in a job or a career, and you've really been thinking, you know, over the last couple of months, I'm not sure that this is for me. I've really sort of had a bit of an epiphany about wanting to do something else, even if you don't know what that is. And this can be a really good one for galvanizing that, process, I suppose, to go from thinking into action, which often we can get very caught up in thinking, and that doesn't actually facilitate change, because it takes action, and doing something about that, even if it's, you know, the tiniest step towards the thing that you want to do, to get out of thinking and into doing. So hopefully those will help if you are wanting or needing to do something different and need some pointers as to where to get started, to think about what might that look like for me. So moving on to the next slide, there are just a couple of quick ones to kind of cycle through quickly here. This, I think, is a really good reminder, I suppose, if you know, some of the things that I've talked about, or some of the things that perhaps you're thinking about just feel big and scary, and I'm not sure, you know. And I think this is a really important reminder that fear and, you know, what we think of actually can often be also known as false evidence appearing real. So that, you know, that point I made about the kind of the limiting beliefs that we might carry, the stories that we might be telling ourselves about, you know, I've only done this particular thing, you know, for so many years, or I could never make that transition, or I'm not qualified enough, or I'm not confident enough to make a bigger shift, or whatever it might be, just to really start to examine what those things are that might be going on for you. Because very often it is, it's this fear thing is actually about false evidence and that mean voice that is, yeah, as I say, particularly unhelpful in times of change. So on to the next slide. This is the last question that I want to leave you with, and with more time I would perhaps ask you to pop in the chat if there was anything you wanted to share on this. But I think this is a really kind of good, challenging question for cutting through perhaps some of those, you know, stories or the limiting beliefs of things that we might be telling ourselves, and really sort of focusing on what you would, you know, what you would do if you are looking or needing to make change, if you knew that you couldn't fail or be rejected, because those are two of the most common sort of fears or limiting beliefs we have about what is possible for us. Yeah, I will leave that with you as yeah, something to think about and to consider. On the next slide, there are some resources that I just want to share with you, so that you've got some books and some other things to dig into if that's something that you want to kind of take a look at in more detail. All of these are here, so take a picture. I'm not going to kind of read them through, but take a picture if you want to have a look at any of these afterwards. The first three are books. The final one is a profile that you can do on the Harvard Business Review. It's free. It's a really kind of interesting one, just if you want to kind of, if you are curious about your levels of curiosity and you want to find out a little bit more about that. There's something there where you can do that really quickly and just have a little look at that. So I hope that it gives you some things to kind of to look into if you're interested, in kind of finding out more about mindset, or this idea about kind of making small changes. Those are really good. Yeah, those are really good books to kind of get started on, to dig into that in a bit more detail. And I think just to wrap up, there is, I think, one more slide where I'm just going to leave you with my details. So I'd love to connect with you. I think I can see some of the people that are on the session, but probably not everyone. So if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so on Instagram. You've got my Instagram details there. My website. I have a Facebook group, so a free private Facebook group specifically for those that are thinking about career change, or kind of perhaps in the zone of needing to do something different, or just not sure kind of where to go next. So if that is you, you're very welcome to come into that group. I share lots of resources and other sort of coaching related things in there by way of support. And then there's a couple of special offers for anyone that is sort of thinking they maybe are in this space of, you know, having a career conundrum, or feeling really disillusioned by what you're doing, or where to go next, which is 25% off a power hour session, which is something that I do with clients, where it's a 1 hour intensive to really get going with your own career strategy, and get you on the path to be able to sort of use some of the tools that I've talked about and more to think about what you're going to do next. And then I've also got one other one that I put together, which is a coaching package. So my next chapter coaching package, 12 weeks, which is 6 sessions, and I will throw in a power hour session for free for anyone that that wants to do that. That always comes with an intro call as standard, before committing to anything, to for me and a kind of prospective client to get to know each other a little bit better. So those are kind of things that if you want to work more on this, or you've got a particular kind of career conundrum that you need some kind of extra support and accountability with, those are some things that might help, in addition to some of the things that we've gone through today. It was a real whistle stop. So I hope you've managed to kind of stay with me along the journey, and there are some things that you've been able to take from that will be helpful, whatever your situation. And I'll hand back to Lou. Hopefully there is a few minutes, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to stay on for as long, to answer any questions that you might have, or if there's anything that's, come up for you that's resonated that you want to talk about.
Thank you. Thanks, Josie. That was amazing. Yeah, a really, really good presentation. I think it's all given us a bit of support, especially in this sort of trying time that we seem to be in at the moment, and definitely the questions that you ask are yeah, it's good. It gets the mind thinking, doesn't it? Instead of us sort of just sitting around worrying at home, I think it's good to get us to be a little bit more proactive. So yeah, I hope that was really helpful to some of you guys. Guys, if you've got any questions at all, then if you just want to pop them in the Q&A. But otherwise, if you don't have any questions today, then obviously Josie shared with you her contact details and how you can reach out to her on different social media. And obviously, if you haven't got that, then you can always contact myself and I can put you in touch with Josie as well. But yeah, but otherwise, it was a great session. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. I've just, yeah, Julia's just said it was great to hear about some positive steps during these crazy times. I know, right? They are crazy, aren't they?
Yeah.
They seem to be surrounded by a lot of negativity
and worrying. Yeah.
I think, we all resonate with that. And I think something I would say about
go for it.
Sorry, Lou, I've got 30 seconds to say that is, it's really, it's a really good point to consider, actually. What are you surrounded by? And obviously there are some things that we can control, as I've talked about, and other things that maybe we can't, in terms of who we're having to be surrounded by, and whether there is that negativity and worrying. But definitely I would think about, actually, what is in your control to sort of to change or to consider, in terms of where that negativity and worrying is coming from, and is it people? Is it how might you need to to change your response to that, or what you kind of allow in terms of the way that people are reacting to you? Is it from looking at the news? Is it from what you're seeing on social media? Remember that we have a lot more control than we think we do over what we curate and what we are deciding to kind of to look at and to sort of to bring into our lives and bring into our brains. So as much as obviously people maybe that we can't necessarily completely cut out or avoid, there are always things we can do. So I think it's a really, really good point to think about where that and I think with
everything that we're going through right now, I think that it's all good. It's a good time for us to take stock and maybe reset goals, and I'm a big believer in in setting goals, but not putting too much pressure on yourself to kind of get there. It's all about not running before you can walk, if that makes sense. So using baby steps, stepping stones to where you want to be, and this is a good time to kind of look at that. But yes, thank you, Josie. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Thanks to everyone that joined us. I think Josie's probably going to be on the networking drinks this evening, so if you want to network with her, then there's still some spaces left for that. So please do. I'll probably be there as well.
Hopefully canine distractions later on. Apologies, I've got a dog at home, and it only takes the smallest noise to
shut up, Jasper.
Usually he's very good, but unfortunately we had a couple of moments, so sorry if that kind of
love it.
distracted or alarmed anyone that they were expecting. I did tell him no cameos.
Another time. All right, lovely. Great. Thanks for that, Josie, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.